Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's fourth space. And thank you for joining us for today's event, our first event of 2025, Women as Peace Builders. The next episode in the part of the Unveiling Equity series. Now, to help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube live from Fourth Space. And we are located here on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. And at Fourth Space, we work with our university community to mobilize knowledge by co-creating daily activities that examine research questions, projects, things in development across the university. We are also running today's event as a live stream Zoom meeting. So for those of you joining us there, we welcome your comments and your questions via the chat. And for those of you here in the space, if you have any comments or questions later on, just raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone over to you so that everyone can hear. And with that, it's very much my pleasure to pass things over to the Director of Partnerships, Program Development, and Manager for the Center of the Study of Learning and Performance, the CSLP, Zeina Ismail Alouche. Zeina, it's great to have you back.
Thank you so much, Douglas, for having us here at the Fourth Space. It has been amazing to come back to this place of rencontre and encounter, so thank you for that. I would like also to start by thanking the Center for the Study of Learning and Performance, the CSLP Concordia, for hosting those events in partnership with the Canadian Practitioners Network for the Prevention of Violent Extremism and the Indigenous Healing Knowledges Chairs at Concordia. Thank you, David Waddington, Ghaida Hassan, and Catherine Kennewiskin Richardson for this partnership. As part of the Unveiling Equity series, I am honored to join this conversation highlighting the pivotal role of women in Lebanon in peace building and preventing violent extremism. Lebanon's history of conflict and instability has underscored the agency of women as key actors fostering social cohesion and addressing the structural and systemic drivers of violence. My own journey has been deeply shaped by Lebanon's legacy of colonialism, conflict, and political instability. For a long time, I was reluctant to admit that I am Lebanese. I used to say I am a woman and I come from Lebanon. Today is a remarkable day, and I would like to claim back my Lebanese identity. And thank you for all those women, men, children, youth in Lebanon who made the change possible. Congratulations. As an Arab woman, a Lebanese woman, I would like to confess that I have the privilege of carrying the Canadian citizenship. I bring with me the perspectives of an immigrant, a settler in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal, and a practitioner who has worked extensively in the fields of child protection, family strengthening, and preventing violence. This journey, however, took a deeply personal turn with the recent war in Lebanon, or against Lebanon. This was the first war ever that I experienced while in exile. It was a jarring moment of disconnection and helplessness, as I watched from afar, unable to return to the places that once held my memories. The war felt like the loss of an intimate part of my identity. Many of us in Lebanon lost our places of memory, only to witness strangers occupying those spaces, altering and manipulating the original sense, the essence of what made them home. In his text titled "What is Lost," Mahmoud Darwish says that cities are smells. Haifa is the smell of pine and wrinkled sheets. Damascus is the smell of jasmine and dried fruit. Beirut is the smell of the sun, sea, smoke, and lemons. A city that cannot be known by its smell is unreliable. Exiles have a shared smell, the smell of longing for something else, a smell that resembles another smell. With the words of Mahmoud Darwish, I learned to understand the loss. This loss, layered with the physical and emotional distance of exile, has deepened my understanding of the profound connection between place, identity, and belonging, particularly for women whose power sustains these ties in the face of conflict and displacement. In moderating this session, we aim to amplify grassroots voices and center the lived experiences of women who are on the front lines of peace building and PVE efforts. So, my dear friends from Lebanon, Jumanah, Christina, and Pascal, thank you for being those women there fighting for us and contributing, maybe also leading the peace building in Lebanon. And on those notes, I would like to invite you to this kind of informal yet candid conversation on the efforts led by amazing women in Lebanon to prevent violence. On those notes, I would like to invite you, maybe we can start with Jumanah from UN Women. If you can start by sharing who you are and your personal connection to peace building and preventing violent extremism, and how your lived experience has shaped your perspective and work in this field.
Thank you, Zaina. Hello. Thank you for this emotional opening of this session. We are now in the process of having Prime Minister being appointed, since we have been in a caretaking deadlock situation since forever in this country. So there's a lot of hope that change is coming for the better for the country, which is amazing. I want to also thank you for inviting me to this important session. My name is Jumanah Zabaneh. I was born a Palestinian refugee in Lebanon. That's a kind of complex sub-community of people living in Lebanon. And I was deprived of the Lebanese nationality because the law doesn't allow my mom, who is Lebanese, to transmit it to me. But recently, through marriage, I became Lebanese, so I identify just like you as an Arab woman, but more and more as a Palestinian Lebanese woman. My work with the UN Women is to lead on the Women, Peace and Security agenda, this global agenda initiated by the UN to ensure that women are protected during conflict, that they have a say in decision-making processes around recovery, around the prevention of another war and wars from happening and conflicts, but also that they have a role in peace building and prevention. So that's my job, and that I'm paid for. But in reality, I am so very committed to this agenda, specifically the dealing with the past dimension of peace building, women-led peace building that is related to the Lebanon war. We have lived a very bloody, violent role between 1975 and 1990. I was born mid-70s, so all my childhood has been about wars and checkpoints and bombings and shelters and so on. And I have to say that this work, specifically reconciliation after the Lebanon Civil War, is a passion because of my lived experience during this period, just like many other women my age. And I have to say, every time we work with the 500 women spread across the country doing peace building, specifically on reconciliation and the Lebanon civil war. Many flashbacks come back and analysis of what happened during that period is revived because we didn't have the chance to reconcile after the Lebanon civil war, and this topic has been a taboo in my family, in my school, just like all the women my age, including you, Zena, feeling that if we don't discuss it, then it will finish, it will end. If we discuss it, it's a risk that another war will happen, which is not true. Discussing what happened during war is healing, is important for a country to move forward and put the past behind. And it's important for non-recurrence, that another war doesn't happen and that the younger generation understands the heavy price of a war in a country. So that's my background and how I come to be engaged in this work. And today in our conversation, I would like to focus on our work, our women-led work for reconciliation in a torn country like Lebanon, the results we achieve, the challenges we are facing, and some prospects for the future. Thank you, Zena.
Thank you, Jumanah. Thank you. Christina, you are representing Fighters for Peace. You can also share with us your personal connection, who you are and how you got into this type of work.
Yeah, thank you, Zena, and hello to everybody. Yeah, my story with peace building and preventing violent extremism is actually quite long and also quite personal. I regard myself a child of the Cold War. I was born and raised in West Germany during the time of the Cold War. And as a teenager, I experienced that American nuclear weapons were stationed next to my hometown. So that rose my awareness about like the imminent danger of a nuclear war and the need for peace. And at the same time, in the 1970s, in Germany, there was a terrorist group, the Red Army Faction, a leftist terrorist group. And I think when I was around maybe 11 years old or 12 years old, they had made a terrorist attack on a department store. I think it was in Munich, I don't remember exactly. And people were dead. And this was like one of the major news that entered my conscience or consciousness as a child back then. And I started to, of course, it was a big shock back then. And I started to wonder why people would do something like this. So it's been from a really early age on that I was attracted or influenced by such issues like war and arms proliferation and enmities between countries, but also terrorism. And since then, I've been somehow active in this field. But now it's become a profession, if you want. 25 years ago, I moved to Lebanon as a journalist, and then I met my husband, who happened to be a former fighter and former commander of one of the militias of the Lebanese Civil War. And so, you know, driven by curiosity, I wanted to understand why a young person, because of course he was very young back then, basically a child soldier. I wanted to find out what would lead a young person to take such steps, to get engaged in violence voluntarily. So I started to work on a documentary about him and realized that basically we were both children of the Cold War, but we were just placed in different geographical areas and surrounded by different societies. So this is what can influence you to take the road towards peace via peace movement, for example, or you take the road towards war because you're convinced that violence is the fastest and most efficient method to achieve your goals, even if your goals are positive and you want a society of social justice, for example. But this was one of the key motivations of my husband. So at the end, we ended up creating a documentary about us and a little bit about this historical period of town. But since I grew up in Germany, I was also very influenced by education, and especially by history education, related to the Second World War, of course. And I was, very aware of the importance of dealing with the past. And when I arrived to Lebanon in the year 2000, I witnessed many cycles of violence and smaller or more limited conflicts. And I was aware of the fact that the Lebanese have not dealt sufficiently, at least, with the past of the Lebanese Civil War. So I got engaged in this topic. So we started to involve ex-combatants, bringing them to schools as testimonies and sharing their life experiences, but also their stories of change from fighters to peace builders. And this was basically how also our organization, for which I work and which I co-founded, Fighters for Peace, how we started. And it's until now basically the core activity that we do. We talk to youth, we go to schools, to youth clubs, and so on. And our ex-combatants share their life stories and their stories of change with younger generations, always in the hope to prevent new conflicts or in the hope to plant seeds of positive change and nonviolence and peace.
Thank you, Christina. Pascal, you might be one of the few women working directly with I don't want to say with those directly involved with violent extremism now in the moment. So can you please also introduce yourself, your personal connection to the context, and you're representing Restart.
Yes, thank you, Zeno. First, I would like to begin by expressing my heartfelt appreciation to Dr. Zena Alouche and CSLP for inviting me to participate in this important discussion. It is an honor to share this platform with such distinguished Lebanese panelists as both of you, really. I'm emotionally affected being with such female human rights activists. It's an honor for me. And to contribute to a topic that holds immense significance to our collective pursuit of peace and reconciliation. My name is Pascal Bafitos, and I work currently as a Restart project coordinator of detention. I have started entering prisons as a volunteer in the Lebanese Red Cross at the age of 16, 17. We started providing core relief items, awareness sessions, but what we miss is the presence of specialists to conduct rehabilitation sessions and interventions with inmates. So then I convinced Restart's administration to work in prisons. And with over 25 years of professional experience in detention facilities, my work has focused on addressing the complex needs of inmates and victims of torture. This journey has been rooted in advocating for human rights, advancing rehabilitation efforts, and promoting meaningful prison reform in challenging and often neglected contexts. My connection to PVE or to peace building is both professional and personal, arising from my direct engagement, as Dr. Sena said, with violent extremist inmates. Over the years, I have led and managed rehabilitation and de-radicalization programs for inmates held in Lebanese detention facilities. These facilities are mainly managed by male police officers, ISF police officers. But at Restart, our detention program is a unique exception. It is composed mainly of women, 25 women and 2 men. This gender composition has influenced the dynamics of the work, bringing empathy, resilience, and refined approach to the rehabilitation process. Restart itself is led by female experts. Our CEO is the president of the UNSPT, and so she's reflecting her global leadership in promoting human rights. Also, the head of the clinical department at Restart Center, she's the former vice president of IRCT, and she's also internationally accredited trainer on documentation of torture. So their leadership underscores the center's commitment to expertise, advocacy, and gender equity in advancing its mission. In my role as Pascal, I have developed and implemented evidence-based de-radicalization program tailored to address the root causes of radicalization. These programs integrated psychological, social, educational, faith-based interventions, vocation trainings, aiming recreational activities, aiming to challenge extremist ideologies while building pathways for sustainable rehabilitation and reintegration into society. So recognizing that each inmate journey is unique, these programs emphasize individual assessment, cultural sensitivity, and collaboration with multidisciplinary team at Restart and in other grassroots organizations. And my academic searches have further informed my work. My PhD dissertation titled Prisons in Lebanon Between Punishments and Reform has allowed me to critically study the challenges within the Lebanese prison system. This research has been instrumental in shaping my approach to creating programs that address both immediate rehabilitation needs and long-term societal reintegration challenges. At Restart, our mission extends beyond the walls of detention facilities. We are committed to combating torture practices and promoting human dignity on both national and regional levels. Our work includes raising awareness, advocating for policy changes, and building the capacity of stakeholders involved in the prevention of torture and ill treatment. Central to our mission is ensuring that victims of torture, ill treatment, and war-related trauma receive the redress they deserve, particularly through the provision of comprehensive rehabilitation services that address physical, psychological, and social recovery. Through my work at Restart, I have also prioritized fostering collaboration between law enforcement officers, inmates, and rehabilitation specialists or teams. This collaborative approach not only ensures the effectiveness of rehabilitation efforts, but also builds trust and promotes a culture of accountability, respect, and mutual understanding within detention facilities. As a woman working in a male-dominated field, I'm particularly aware of the gender dimensions of incarceration and rehabilitation. The composition of our predominantly female detention team at Restart has underscored the transformative impact women can have in creating safe and effective rehabilitation programs. This has further powered my advocacy for greater inclusion of women professionals in prison systems and related initiatives. Thank you, Zaina.
Thank you so much, Pascal. And if you want me to call you Dr. Pascal, I will allow you to say Dr. Zaina. We've agreed on this.
I'm doing my best.
No, we're here just in a conversation, so please let's avoid any acronyms. Thank you so much, Jumanah, Christina, and Pascal, for sharing your own journey. And we can see how your engagement in this field is not only coming from like a professional, skillful perspective, but also there is this personal connection to the subject. And we know from a gender perspective how much women are silenced in those spaces, though they are the one also leading the peace building and the preventing spaces, whereas wars are led by others. So I would like to ask you about how you're working to amplify the voices of grassroots women in Lebanon, to make sure that their experiences, but also their ways of doing, their ways of coping, but also their ways of challenging wars and violent extremism are central to your peace building efforts from a professional perspective. So this blending between professional and personal, but also allowing the space for voices to come through. I don't want to keep on assigning you to answer, so please feel free to take the space. But I will start from Jumanah, and then please join in, okay?
Yes.
And, this is a very informal conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting question because, I mean, you say first grassroots level. So when you say grassroots level, it means lay women. It means women that maybe never had the chance to be asked any question about themselves, let alone about the war. I'm talking about the dimension of our work related to reconciliation. I'll give you an example. We went to Akkar to establish a reconciliation group in Akkar.
Can you just explain to us, when you say Akkar, we know what do you mean?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. For others,
It's one deprived area of Lebanon, one of the most deprived areas of Lebanon, rural area that is not usually, it's labeled as a deprived area, like a whole governorate, I'm not saying the neighborhood, in the north of Lebanon on the borders with Syria. So we want to establish, just like in many other places, a women group to do reconciliation. So we always take 2 women groups that were at war during the Lebanon Civil War and where there are tensions between the communities. So we select women groups from this side and women groups from the other side. And it took us, I mean, we had planned 10 dialogue sessions about the Lebanon Civil War to have some reconciliation activity done jointly by them. It took us more than half of the time to have the women focus on speaking about themselves. Number one, they were extremely skeptical. Why are you opening the subject of the Lebanon Civil War 25 years after that? And by the way, we are commemorating the Lebanon's 50th anniversary of the start of the Lebanon Civil War in April this year. So we're coming to them after 50 years to say, let's reconcile and discuss what happened. So there was a lot of skepticism, but there was also, once we tackled this, there was also a huge effort done to have the woman speak about herself, not about the husband, what happened to the husband, what did the son feel, but what about her? Like, what did you feel during this war? Were you scared? Did you do anything to protect yourself? Did you feel your rights were fulfilled? So going to the grassroots groups in your question means going outside the traditionally targeted areas and the traditionally targeted groups, the elite group of women, and going to ask them questions and see how they answer. So I would say the first point is, how do you select these women? The further you go away from cities and spaces that are targeted by organizations, programs, the more difficult it becomes and more support services you need to provide. So selection is important, daring to go outside the normal spaces. And then the second is, in my work, is the challenge of documenting the stories of women. I'm talking about, again, a civil war that is now 50 years old. So when we Googled in 2018, before we started peacebuilding work in Lebanon as UN Women, we couldn't find anything mentioning the situation of women in the war, which we found extremely strange. So documenting stories through oral history was our way to amplify the voices of these women living in across the country and those that lived through the war. So we're actually releasing now in April the first ever oral history archive of the situation of women during the Lebanon Civil War, after transcribing hundreds of hours of dialogue across the country led by women and targeting women. So oral history and documentation is important. And the other thing we did is create spaces where women peace builders could organize and amplify their voices together. In January 2024, so that's like a first anniversary now, we launched the first ever Women Peace Building Network in Lebanon. And the aim of this network is for women peace builders to mutually reinforce each other, but also to unify their voice, demanding peace, demanding a ceasefire. We have had this Women Peace Building Network release 3 statements so far. One was about a humanitarian ceasefire back in November. Then in December, there was a statement that the peace builder issued together on how the recovery and the reconstruction in the affected areas by the conflict should be gender sensitive and bring women on board and cater for women's needs. And the third statement was just sent now to the new president that was elected on Friday, demanding that the cabinet should be inclusive of women, because inclusion means more justice, less conflict, less tensions, etc., etc. So to summarize, and we've been, since we started, I mean, and the more we do work, the more we feel comfortable tackling these sensitive topics, we've been creating opportunities for these women to meet with decision makers and make their demands heard. We've done campaigns promoting these women, their faces, their names, their locations, what they do as individual women peace builders. So different strategies to fill the gap we identified when we first Googled the situation of women peace builders in 2018, and we didn't find much in the literature. I'll stop here to give the chance to my other colleagues to
I have a burning question that is out of the script, but I will keep it until we hear from Christina and Pascal. Yeah. Who would like to go next?
Yeah, maybe I'll go next because, Jumanah already mentioned the importance of oral history and documentation. So just to brief you a little bit more about Fighters for Peace. Fighters for Peace was founded in 2014 by 5 former ex-combatants from the Lebanese Civil War. They are all men. But I was part of this process from the very beginning. And our organization consists mainly of male ex-combatants, not exclusively, but what is important that it brings together former enemies as well. And what is also important is that some of the ex-combatants were or are women. So Jumanah already mentioned, I think, a lack of visibility of women in
Yes.
war and peace. And so we had the same experience that, I mean, if you Google the Lebanese Civil War, you find pictures of male combatants and of women, but only as victims. You don't find many pictures of female combatants, but they existed in several parties, in the Communist Party, some Palestinian parties, the Lebanese forces, which were was a Christian militia.
Yeah.
So they existed, and so we wanted to give visibility to these women who, like our male ex-combatants, also went through a deep transformation process and process of personal change from fighter to peace builder. With the difference that women suffered from double stigmatization, if you want, because for a long time now it's been changing, also due to our work. But for many, many years, it was a stigma to say that you had participated in the civil war, that you were a fighter. And for women, it was a double stigma because also by the rather conservative Lebanese society, they could not openly admit that they were fighting alongside male comrades or colleagues. So I think we changed that, and one of the way to change it is exactly also as Jumanah said, through oral history interviews, through documentaries, through public appearances of these women, just to change a little bit this part of history and to give more visibility to women and to say that women can really and do play all roles in society, whether they are positive as peacemakers or negative as fighters, but they have the capacity to play all roles. And I think it's very important to acknowledge this and to recognize it, because if we want to counter violent extremism, we have to take into consideration that not only men and boys might be radicalized by a violent ideology and go into extremist groups and movements, but it could also be women. And if you look, for example, at Hezbollah, they have, okay, their fighters are men, but you have a huge support network and structures where women are also, very much involved and play very important roles and pass on the ideology in the education, in the family, and raising the children, etc., etc. So we need to have like this gender dimension of preventing and countering violent extremism. And the last thing maybe I wanted to say is that if we want to, give more importance to women in peace building, we need to gain over men to support these processes as well. So in Fighters for Peace, since most of our members are men, we are working now on different perceptions of masculinity. We are questioning patriarchal structures and patriarchal systems, and gradually opening up the scope of the perceptions of how you can live a meaningful and impactful masculinity, but away from dominance, away from aggression, away from violence, and ultimately, of course, also supporting women and gender equality.
I also want to second what you said, Christina. Our position is not that women are always peace builders. Women can do everything. They have also been fighters. They have been politicians that contributed to the conflict happening. They have been mobilizing for a war. They have also been responding to the war. They have done a variety. So we refuse to say that women are only peace builders because they are mothers and they think about the children, the traditional way of portraying women. We say women have done everything, and we need to make all these roles visible.
Pascal?
Working with incarcerated individuals involved in violent extremism often subjects us or correctional specialists to stigmatization. This underscores the need for safe platforms where we can share our experiences and insights without fear of judgment or stigma. At Restart, we address this need by organizing moderated focus group led by the head of the clinical department, enabling female correctional specialists and also male specialists to articulate their challenges and propose practical solutions. Also, at Restart, we document and share with the project's donors the journeys of violent extremist inmates who have successfully undergone rehabilitation, as well as the achievement of specialists who have contributed to de-radicalization programs for VE inmates. However, we must extend this effort to a broader audience by sharing these stories with relevant stakeholders and the national community. Such stories have the potential to inspire others, showcasing the transformative impact of our work. Also restarts membership in a national network, WGP, Working Group for Prisons, which includes international and national organizations and stakeholders involved in prison reform, such as the ISF, the Internal Security Forces, and the Ministry of Justice. Enhances our ability to amplify voices behind prison walls. By engaging with broader networks, including yours, our perspectives can be effectively shared in national and international peace-building forums. Besides Restart regular meetings with ISF officers in charge, foster a collaborative environment where male officers are encouraged to listen to and value our insights. Additionally, as specialists working in detention facilities for both men and women on national level, our insights should inform the design of policies and interventions. This can be achieved through workshops or participatory researchers initiatives that connect inmates with external stakeholders. By incorporating our experiences into policy design, we can ensure that solutions are grounded in reality and responsive to the needs of the inmates and the respective communities.
Thank you for sharing this and for highlighting the importance of the lived experience and shaping it into oral history. And my out of the text or text question, if you allow me. When we speak about visibility, we speak also about public exposure, and with that would come risk and threat. Just a couple of days ago, Abir Rahal, a journalist, was killed by her quote-unquote husband. She was shot with a gun in Lebanon. We're talking like 2 weeks ago. So how much violence in general is connected to feminicide, and how much threat we're putting on the shoulders of women whose narratives are pillars to making the change, to speak about the history, but also to look forward for a reconciling future. So what about those measures? How we can navigate bringing the voices forward while also ensuring safety at a time when women are still being killed under many falsely justifications.
Thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to say that if you look at the situation in Lebanon in general, since 2019, we have had a lot of pressures on communities and families. We had protests that disturbed the trust between state entities and people and citizens and the people living in Lebanon. We had the COVID that led to massive economic impact on women that had to leave their job and, you know, all sorts of things. We had the Beirut explosion, the port explosion, one of the biggest explosions, non-nuclear explosions in the world. We had the war recently. We had the political deadlock and hate speech against the refugee population due to the situation in Syria and Lebanon being the country that is hosting the highest number of refugees. We also had a general backlash on the gender agenda, just like everywhere in the world, including, I think, in Canada also. Everywhere in the world, we're seeing backlash on gender equality agenda and women's rights. So the women we work with are part of the society that is facing these problems. They are losing their jobs. There is a higher level of violence at home because of the stresses. There is a backlash on them, on any action related to women. We have had concretely women threatened in one area, in one of the suburbs of Beirut, attacked by violent extremist groups when they announced an activity in their center that mentioned the word gender equality. So they were harassed, they were threatened by death. We saw the same in the north of Lebanon communities with organizations working with Palestinian refugee women, that the agenda on women is a Western agenda, that we're promoting LGBTQIA rights, that is a threat to the family structure in our society, and so on. So, yes, these women are already facing higher levels of violence, gender-based violence at home and everywhere. But the more they challenge the traditional roles, by being peace-building leaders, by taking up a role that is not seen as traditional, they are exposing themselves to an additional layer of violence. So what we've done is factored in, supported these women by, for example, partnering with a feminist protection, women-led civil society organization whose mandate is 100% protection mandate from gender-based violence, that the organization provides all of our women engaged in the work with free legal aid. There's a hotline where they can call for receiving support, including safe shelter if they need it, and so on. So partnering with a feminist organization with the protection mandate has been a strategy for us. The second thing has been increased investment in knowledge about what is gender-based violence, because that also is a problem. We assume that women understand what gender-based violence is. We have a high level of normalization of violence against women in our society. So that's the second dimension we did. And the third dimension was continuous risk assessment to do no harm. So whenever there was any risk, we assessed through our regular monitoring on women, we would stop, suspend, or relocate the activity so that there is no unnecessary exposure to women. On the other hand, the more we spoke to women about dealing with the past, and the more they felt confident and comfortable, and their self-esteem increased, the more they revealed horrific cases of violence against them, either from the Lebanon civil war. For example, we had one woman come forward and say, I gave my daughter to adoption. I need you to help me trace her because the father was an ex-fighter and he didn't want to marry me to legitimize the baby. We had other women speak about rape when they were children during the Lebanon civil war. All sorts of things were shared during these sessions. So it does harm to the women if considerations for violence against women are not factored into any intervention with any woman at whichever level you work with, especially with vulnerable groups.
Yes.
Yeah,
Christina,
maybe I can.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I can. I'm happy to share our approach. I mean, Fighters for Peace offers a safe space for anyone, not only for ex-combatants from the civil war, but also from more recent conflicts, to find, peers who have gone through comparable life experiences, and we offer this safe space so that they can open up to us and share their experiences with us in the safe space. But I must say, like, having worked with ex-combatants, both male and female, for since 2014, I think we realized that it's the most difficult step for anyone is really to come out in public and
Yes.
to admit in public what he or she has done. And then you see those persons who, once were war heroes and heavily armed, and then they enter a stage and their voice sometimes shakes. And in the beginning, they are insecure, but then, they also get a lot of feedback from the audience, from youth, from the general public. Having said that, we never force anyone to come out in public. This is purely voluntary.
Yeah.
But I think we had some really great role models who took the first steps, and then it had this dynamic. And people, both men and women, were often relieved that they could actually come out with their stories and say, I was sharing in a conflict and a war. Some share very intimate details of terrible things that they have done. And we use different approaches and techniques. And one of them is the playback theater, which again is a very safe environment. It's artistic. At the end, it's a play. But you can share your stories, your grievances, even traumatic experiences, and then it is reenacted on the stage. So you get this artistic reflection and also communication and dialogue with the artists, with the actors on stage, but also with the audience. And all stories are valid. All human lives count equally. There is no hierarchy. There is no preconception, no judgment. So this is a completely free space, and we found this method incredibly effective, but also in terms of risk assessment or harm, a very, very good method not to commit harm, because it's in a very safe space, it's directed, you can increase and decrease intensity or levels of intensity. So it's been an amazing tool. So this is just one example, but again, yes, we need to be aware that when people come out and talk in public and reveal very personal issues, that they must know that, for example, the label of combatant will stick to them for the rest of their lives. And they need to be aware if they can handle, such a label or not. So we need to really openly address these kind of things. I would like to mention maybe one last thing that happened last year. We had a conference on women, peace and security, and one of our male ex-combatants came on stage and took this as an opportunity to come out with a story where he was raped as a young boy during the war. So he also experienced gender-based violence, but as a boy. And I think these things are so important. And I asked him later on, do you regret, that you spoke about it? And he said, no, on the contrary, in the first time since 40 years, I feel I liberated myself from this internal prison that I had imposed on myself because I didn't tell anybody of what I experienced. And it was an incredibly moving experience. Many people in the public were crying, and they came up to him after he finished his testimony and, congratulated him and supported him. And we were actually more afraid than him that when he goes back to his village, there might be some, negative reactions and so on. But no, it was the contrary, was the case. So yes, it takes courage. Yes, it needs awareness about the risks. But also when you take the risk and when you are sure that you want to do this, then it can be incredibly relieving and rewarding as well. And I think this is the way to go about it if you want to achieve change in society and in cultural perceptions, for example, of gender-based violence, whether it happened to men or to women. So this is the way to go about it. But of course, the people who do have the courage to engage in such processes need the adequate awareness and support.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those experiences. And I understand that they have their impact not only on the individuals revealing and sharing their own lived experiences, but on you also as people working, people and women working in the field. And Pascal, maybe before answering this question, I would like to add a layer to it, which is related also to your own lived experiences as women working in this field, that that is not always, how you can say it, appreciated by others. You face challenges, specifically you, Pascal, you go to jails, you enter that space, you deal with the whole security system within the jail, you witness, but you also deal with a, how you can say it, a systemic, structured violence, which is rarely, or maybe I am a bit pessimistic, but it's not gender sensitive. How do you live it yourself? How do you navigate that space as a woman, as a PhD holder, as a professional, but also as a mother, as a wife, as like with extended family? How do you live this experience, and how do you navigate those challenging circumstances?
Okay. Zena, thank you. It's so true. As if you are working with us in places of detention, yes, we faced stigma, and not from just the inmates, also from, unfortunately, from some of the ISF officers.
What do you mean by ISF?
Internal security forces, police officers, some of them. And sometimes from our own families. So as women working in detention facilities managed mainly by male, by male police officers, we encountered, and we are still encountering, many challenges on that level. I have started working as a social worker at Restart in places of detention in 2005. And since then, I faced resistance from the ISF officers and also from the inmates. I was the only female or the only specialist working in a central prison in Lebanon. So even the prison warden once remarked that if I were your husband, I won't let you work in such a context. So, but over time, we gained this trust and the respect of the ISF officers and the inmates after providing support to the inmates on mental health level, and also because we enhanced the living conditions of the inmates. So in that way, we gained their respect. I have many examples to share with you, but maybe I prefer not to because as a social workers, psychologists, they faced many incidents inside the prisons, either by ISF officers or by male inmates. But
You sort
I prefer not to share these incidents, if I may. I can share with you other challenges because these incidents maybe it will have like it will harm the specialist or so I
you don't have to go beyond your boundaries.
thank you so much. As challenges faced by our team, specifically working with with violent extremist inmates in Lebanon. First, the prison warden, I faced many difficulties in obtaining his approval to work in such building. You know, it's a building, building B.
There is a specific building in the prison
Yes,
dedicated to persons convicted with violent extremism.
terrorism.
And you're saying Islamist, but you don't want to label them. But most of the time, this is the situation in Lebanon. So you wanted to access that building.
Yes. So we faced difficulties. I lost you?
No,
do
you're
you-
on. No worries.
No, okay, thank you. So the prison warden initially expressed doubts about the inmates' willingness to accept our presence there, given that they were all convicted on terrorism-related offenses or charges. This doubt was compounded by the under-evaluation of us as women, expertise in a male environment and challenging environment. How we faced, you said, you asked me how we face these challenges. First of all, our success in other prisons, central prisons in Lebanon, led the ISF Directorate and officers trust us and seek our support. Yani they called us and asked us for support on many issues, especially after the economic crisis in Lebanon. So overcoming initial resistance with impactful programs has fostered our collaboration with the internal security forces. So we built trust, as I mentioned, and also I don't know if I can mention that I had a meeting with the imams and sheikh who they are managing this building. They are incarcerated and they are managing. We have self-management in our prisons in Lebanon, mainly, because we lack guards and
religious figures incarcerated in the prison. You seek their help to reach out to the other prisoners.
I cannot enter this prison without their approval. They are the one who are managing this building. So I met with them and we agreed to respect their values and culture. So we covered our hair during the sessions, which was greatly appreciated by them. And this mutual respect built trust and allowed us to provide the services effectively. Also, we adapted the services to the inmates' need. Initially, the extremist inmates there, they rejected mental health services, literally. So we began by providing medical services and gradually building trust with them. Over time, most inmates and surprisingly, most incarcerated leaders of armed conflicts group in Lebanon, ISIS, Fatah Islam, most of the leaders consistently attended mental health sessions and expressed appreciation for our services. Certainly, we face many challenges there because we have just one or two ISF, internal security forces in the prison, because there's lack of ISF members and officers. So recognizing the personal risk involved, an expert conducted a tailored safety and security training for restart specialists working in detention facilities. And a comprehensive policy was also developed to address challenges and ensure our safety in places of detention. Also, I should mention that collaborating with male officers who support gender equality has been very crucial in fostering a more inclusive peace-building approach.
Yes, but your answers gave us a kind of vision on how things are addressed in terms of ensuring safety, whereas is providing support to women directly and ensuring legal aid, safe places, shelters in case of need for shelter, but also relying on arts as a mechanism to share experiences. And Pascal, you shedded light on the importance of support of system, but also the building the relationship and the trust. Nevertheless, Jumanah, this is still I would say, quote unquote, risky space. We remember when the report on the experiences of women during war was launched / not launched in a way.
War crimes.
Yeah, war crimes. It was a tough experiences for you all, especially like you, Jumanah, coming from UN perspective. There is also this skeptical perspective towards UN and the legacy of colonialization, etc. Revealing such tough realities from distance might become problematic. So also you've mentioned the adoption, and you know how much like I'm involved in such a topic where illegal adoptions like abduction of children was highly practiced during wartime until now, unfortunately, and it was covered by people in power, and they are still in power until now. So it's not only about risks in the past, those people are still around, and while there is no labeling towards them, but they know deeply that you're talking about them. So yeah, it's how do we navigate this as women?
It's very difficult, but it's needed. It's our role also. Like I'll give you concrete examples. I mean, emerging now from the situation in the whole region and in Lebanon specifically. For those listening to us, UN Women back in 2020, I think we released a report, groundbreaking report, that confirms that gender war crimes were committed during the Lebanon civil war. Of course, because of sensitivity and everything, we didn't mention who is the perpetrator, where did it happen, when did it happen, to protect, but also that was the recommendation of senior peace builders in the country, that we should only release the report including trends of what happened. So we know now for sure that rape was a tactic of war, gang rapes, sexualized torture of women in detention centers, etc., etc. So we released that report. It's very sensitive. And then we put it on the back burner a little bit and started doing behind the doors consultations with historians, for example, so that they incorporate the findings in the development of the new history textbooks. We did it with the diplomatic missions in the country. We did it with peace building actors, etc., etc. We also validated it with the local communities, and there is not a single place where we shared the findings of this report that women were used as a tactic of war in terms of gender-based violence, where the community refused or didn't agree that that happened. The more we disseminated this report and discussed it, the more cases were revealed and came forward requesting either support or confirming what happened. I also want to say that for our women, there is another issue. I mean, of course, all these women are still alive and they are everywhere. We have in this document, we released the study, interviewed 250 women that were either witnesses or they themselves experienced gender-based violence as a tactic of war. But we then also currently, we're looking at the issue of the missing and the disappeared and how the 17,000 people still missing from the Lebanon civil war, the issue ended up with women who continue the fight. It's the women that mobilized to have the law on the missing and disappeared passed. It's the women that were coerced or pressured or exploited so that they can know the fate of their men missing and disappeared. And I mean, every now and then we receive comments like, how is this relevant now after 50 years? And 2 weeks ago, when the Syria regime collapsed, the issue of the missing and disappeared re-emerged as a major priority topic between Lebanon and Syria. The National Commission for the Missing and Disappeared is now under the spotlight. The Prime Minister committed to supporting this National Commission to search for the missing and disappeared. So this is, I mean, these are proofs that if you don't deal with the past, you will still drag with the consequences of the war, and there will be no healing. There will be no healing unless we deal with these issues or we understand what happened and then collectively decide we need to move forward and stop another bloody, violent war from happening. So every now and then there's something that emerges from the past, just like when the Beirut explosion, the port explosion happened, the public blamed it on the fact that there was never any accountability since the Lebanon civil war for any politician. And that's why they continue dealing with the country just like the civil war days. So this is what I wanted to tell you. It's extremely sensitive. And that's why one key learning we have from working with 500 women across the country on peace building is, of course, protecting women from violence and everything we mentioned. But also there is no one size or one model that fits all. We follow what the local women tell us. They are leaders, they know the context, they know where they can push the edge, they know where to stop, they know about the risks, they know about the actors, they know about dynamics. We, even us living in the country, but in other locations, do not understand like they understand. So one key recommendation and learning that keeps on coming up is that there's no one size fits all. There are general principles, but the process of peace building should be led by local women in their communities. They're in the driving seat, and we support and follow their advice. And this is decolonization of the agenda on peace building. This is what means decolonization and localization of the agenda on women, peace and security.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jumanah, for this revisit of how you approach the work and navigate threats, especially when it comes to realities lived by women during the war. And allow me to just to salute Wadat Halwani, a great woman who led the work on the missing and disappeared people in Lebanon. She lost her husband. Her husband went missing early in the 70s, and then she worked hard, and she's still working hard to find truth, not only for her but with her on behalf of 17 missing missing people in Lebanon. So, yeah, thank you, Wadad, for all this amazing work you've done. While we're approaching the last...
Can I just jump in?
I want to relay the question to you, but I would like to also invite those people attending with us here in person or the people listening to us on the Zoom to start asking questions. And I will give it to you, Christina, but I would like to add also a layer to it. You, as a German woman, you carry with you this colonial lens, and you live in Lebanon. You are married to an ex-combatant, and you're leading also work in Lebanon with Fighters for Peace to work on reconciliation, to dig into history. So I would like to know, how do you navigate those identities, knowing that to be living, to be loving, to have family with an ex-combatant is by itself a journey. So how do you navigate this, all of this?
Yeah, it hasn't always been easy, but I've been driven by a lot of curiosity, first of all. I think that's very, very important. And yeah, I let myself go into this journey. I didn't have any expectations or preconceptions or anything. So, but the main factor was my curiosity and the desire to really go deep and to understand motivations and factors that lead someone to enter such violent environments, etc., etc. But as a woman and as coming from Germany, so I'm still the foreigner, the ajnabiyya, although I've been living in Lebanon for 25 years, has given me maybe even some space. So it probably sounds like a cliche, but like when you're a woman and plus a foreigner in between brackets, you're not taking so seriously as like, she doesn't really know, but yeah, let her do, why not? And so, for example, one of my ideas was, or what I saw, what was needed when I started to work with the ex-combatants over 12, 13 years ago, was that they would need to engage in a process of critical self-reflection, of reassessing their roles, of finding new perspectives and new purpose and belonging. And but it was very clear to me from the beginning that they wouldn't go into group therapy. No way they would go to psychologists. That's another stigma. Going to psychologists is only for crazy people, etc., etc. So I was searching for very, unconventional method to engage them in such processes of critical self-reflection and reassessment, and I came across a method which is called biography work. It's very widely used in the German language countries, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, especially also when working with violent extremists. And I found this method extremely beneficial. So I told them, well, why don't we do biography work? I took the courses, I got the certificate, etc. And they said, like, biography, what? What are you talking about? But it's like a method that really allows you to reflect on your lifelines, on the ruptures in your lifelines, on the crisis that you had in your lives, but also on your inner resources, on things that helped you to move on things that made you strong and resilient, etc. And at the end, biography work also has the purpose to, focus on future perspectives and your inner strengths and capabilities. So basically, Fighters for Peace allowed me to engage in this journey. In the beginning, they were, not taking me very seriously, but then they very quickly found out that it's hugely beneficial for them. And so they were convinced. So it was like trying it and doing it, but then it really happened to be the right method. And now they are willing to engage with psychologists. They're willing to tackle issues of masculinity and patriarchy and violence and all these kind of things. So I think we've gone like really, really far. So I think I didn't see it as always as something negative, they're not taking me seriously or so. I took it from the angle that, okay, they give me the freedom, they don't take me seriously, but they let me try it and it worked. And now they can see how hugely beneficial this has been for them. But definitely it's useful to have, you know, an out, or like, let's say I do have insider knowledge by now, of course, after 25 years, but I also maintain the bird's perspective. So this is what allowed me, especially in the beginning when I came to Lebanon as a journalist and having had this history education in Germany that really left an important mark on my life. That's when I realized that this is lacking, and actually before we started Fighters for Peace, I was working with other peace organizations in Lebanon, where we started to work with the youth on dealing with the past, on the memory. I used, you know, my background as a journalist and filmmaker to engage youth in the filmmaking process. And they said, you know, let's not talk about the war, that's boring. And then I said, okay, let's make a film. And then that's what they found interesting. But then, of course, we ended up making films about the Civil War. So I think it had helped me a lot, you know, to have the insider knowledge, but also the bird's perspective. And yeah, as I said, sometimes as a woman and plus as a foreigner, you're not taken seriously, but that it sometimes can be an advantage, you know, just to go ahead and to try your things.
You use that advantage to build your strategy and keep on going with the work. I would like to invite our guests if they have any question. If you have any question on Zoom.
Yes, actually, we do have one question on Zoom. And just before I call on you, I just want to let everyone know online that you can feel free to type your question into the chat and we will read it out loud for you. Or you can use the raise hand function and we will call on you to turn your camera and microphone. For those of you here in the space, you can just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you. So first, I see online that we have Egbor with a raised hand. If you want to turn on your camera, feel free and unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to listen to what you have been saying. I'm calling from Lagos to Nigeria. I really enjoyed discussing the topic, the lectures, and everything you said about the work that went on in Lebanon.
I'm sorry.
The whole of society, the
So you're
civil
calling
days and everything.
Nigeria?
It's a little difficult to hear you. Could you repeat your question, please?
My question is about the civil days.
Yeah. Maybe she can type her question.
Yes, Egbor, if you could type your question into the chat, that would be helpful. We're having some difficulty hearing you with the background noise. So please type it into the chat and we'll read it out loud. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Do we have any other questions, both online or in the space? Yes, I see one over here in the space.
Hi, first let me thank all of you, not only for the conversation, but all of the good work that you've been doing in Lebanon. And it's really heartwarming to see Lebanese women leading a panel and full of other Lebanese women building peace in a country that suffered from lack of peace in most of its history. So I am a gender economist and I do research about different gender topics, from gender-based violence to women participation in the economy in Lebanon in specific. And although we have a lot of lack of data, we managed to find a huge effect of patriarchal norms into in Lebanon that affects, especially in regions that you were mentioning, on women empowerment, on women like participation even in the labor force, not even in peace or in government representation. Even in gender-based violence questions, we find that like more than 60% of women would believe that it's okay to be victims for gender-based violence from a male in their family. And although I lived 25 years in Lebanon, for me it was shocking that we still lack so much awareness. So for me, I believe that starting to get to women's role and let the women work their role as peace builders, we want them to actually start by participating in their role in the society fully in an equal manner, and all of that starts by awareness. You all mentioned, in a way, the role of education and trainings into raising that awareness and empowering women and let them kind of know how equally they can be participating in the society. So coming from an academic background, I would love to hear the policy recommendation or the social acts recommendation from people that are actually involved on the ground with those matters, and how we from academia, we can like link to what's happening on the ground and participate in a way in the beautiful work that you are all doing into fighting this huge gender inequality that we have in Lebanon, let alone getting into building peace in Lebanon. And thank you all.
Shall I answer?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Jumanah.
What a difficult question you are asking. I didn't get to know your name, but you sounded Lebanese. Yeah, I mean,
What's
the
your
issue
name?
of
Sham.
I'm sorry for missing this part. I am Sham Karakji, and yes, I'm like you, from a Lebanese mother. I'm an Arab woman from a Lebanese mother, and I spent a significant time in Lebanon.
Excellent. So yes, I mean, one of the portfolios I manage within UN Women is the social norms portfolio, which to me is the root cause of everything women face. If we're talking about Lebanon and Lebanon, but no globally, the idea that the main role of a woman is the family, is keeping the family together, caring for the family, taking care of the family, the dimension we call the unpaid care burden that the women have. So when you say that the main role of a woman, and you say it in different way, you say through advertising, you see advertising for Mother's Day all about kitchen equipment. You say it through toys. When you go buy a toy for your daughter, you're not allowed to buy, or the interesting toys are in the boys section and they are in blue. Girls' toys are in pink, and it's all about poupée and dolls and care and kitchens and cleaning and all. So in different ways, you show that the main role for a woman is the family, keeping the family together, caring for the family. And then if she manages, after doing all of that, to have a job, to have a career, to participate in whatever something interesting she's interested in, then fine. But first, the family. And that includes violence against women. When a woman is a victim of violence, all those that interfere to solve this problem, I'm not talking feminist people like us, they always say you need to reconsider to keep the family together. So, and in many cases, most of the cases, she stays because she's not economically empowered to be able to take any action to protect herself as a priority. So that's not the link between women economic empowerment, and I know we have colleagues here on the call specialized in women economic empowerment. And the protection from violence is massive, because most of the time when woman stays in an abusive relationship, it's because the family doesn't want her back, her parents, because she's a financial burden on the family, let alone the stigma. So economic empowerment is key. And second is portraying women in everything we do in non-traditional roles, that she's not only a mom, a breastfeeding, a pregnant, cook, a cleaner, whatever. She's also a general in the army. She is also a pilot. She is also an academic, a scientist, etc. The way we portray women in the media, in the textbooks. We, for example, did an analysis of the history textbooks in Lebanon. And the findings are that all women mentioned in the history textbooks in Lebanon, that are the books we study accredited by the Ministry of Education, portray women as an annex to a man, either because her father was important politician, or the son, or the brother, or something. There was only one woman mentioned that was a leader. There was no man, in her, story. She's from Algeria. We also looked at who wrote the history textbooks. It was 23 authors. One was a woman that did a review. So she's not even invited to write a history, even if we have many women historians. So portraying women in non-traditional roles, but also men in non-traditional roles. And we are also working on this, unpaid care work, cleaning, taking care of a child, cooking is also a man's business, and there shouldn't be a stigma around that. And then finally, impunity and no accountability for perpetrators of violence against women. We say that the reason why more women dare to commit violence against their women is because nobody was ever convicted. So you get away with it through different channels. You get away with it. So the message is you can do it and you can be safe. You will not be held accountable for that. And I also want to say, I give you an example about how much women, because of lack of understanding and lack of discussion about this topic, we normalize violence, high levels of violence. We were discussing, for example, women at checkpoints in the Lebanon civil war. And most of the women didn't think that verbal harassment towards them was a violation of their right. As long as it's not rape, as long as it's not touching in private parts, it's acceptable, it's fine. We need to accept it and move on. So understanding what is violence against women, gender-based violence, by women themselves, help shift the discourse and help having women stand up and say, no, we don't subscribe to this definition. We don't approve of this, and so on and so forth. I can go on forever on this topic.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jumanah, for highlighting those parameters that impact our voices as women impacted by violence, but also challenging violence and standing against violence in all its parameters. So we bypassed by 3 minutes the 12 o'clock time for our conversation, but it's only stating that we will need more conversations on this topic. So thank you for being there, and thank you for sharing your powerful stories, your lived experiences, but also the great work that you're doing there on our behalf. I started this conversation by the words of Mahmoud Darwish talking about the cities and the smell of cities. While here in Canada, thank you for bringing that smell over here, and thank you for making the smell of our city, of our country, alive. Elias Khoury, who is a great novelist, passed away a couple of months ago. He says, things are alive when they still smell. So please stay that smell of our beloved country and our beloved city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zaina. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma. We are very grateful.
Okay, thank you, Zaina, Christina, Jumanah, Pascal. Thank you, everyone here in the space also for joining us and for your questions, and those of you joining us online as well. I just wanted to let you know that this conversation remains available on our YouTube channel, so please visit it there and share. And we will be closing up the live stream and the Zoom now, but thanks again for joining.